So there was often times you've got this crazy, like this paparazzi thing happening, but people knew where you were going because people were already tracking your phone. And you didn't know all this.
No.
And then...
Well, they try and cause mayhem within the group. So, you've got Beckham and myself, and then you've got two SAS commandos, and you've got two ex-Cuban, Fidel Castro Secret Service agents.
Yeah.
These are highly skilled operators.
Yes.
And there's six of us that know where we're going. Beckham, myself, and these four. And we get there, and only six of us know where we're going. But we get there as 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people, including, paparazzi.
Wow.
So, then within the group, people start going, someone here's leaking.
Yeah. Some of the best learning you will ever do will be travelling. Give yourself space, time to creatively think, to learn, to meet people, or take a vacation with your family. Give yourself that time. And there's no better person or people or company to help you than the people at Tripadeal. Their experienced agents will look after you from start to finish. They will plan your flights, your accommodation, your car, your excursions, whatever you need. If you want to plan a trip of a lifetime, Tripadeal is the place to go. tripadeal.com.au. Welcome team. Today I'm bringing to you one of the most fascinating stories. One of the most fascinating stories in sport, but in life. A top 5 book at the moment is called Riding Shotgun, and it's the autobiography of Bernal. A story of, like we mentioned off air, immigrants in the 1960s. Spanish immigrants that came out, and then their son became the first Australian to ever go and play professionally in Spain.
The country that they had to leave.
They had to leave. That alone, and even let's respect the history of football in Australia, you were the first person to do that, to play in Spain. There's not many have done it since. You were the first person to captain a football team in England. There's been some have done it since. There's a lot of firsts for you. Can I just throw straight to you and you tell me how it all started? Let's go to your parents.
Well, thanks for having us on here, because I think you do a wonderful podcast, and I'm just very grateful to be able to share my story. But I decided to write my book, Riding Shotgun, because one, I didn't think that we in Australia have done football history well. I think the NRL and AFL and cricket, do their past pioneers and players, way better than what we do in football. So part of mine was to tell my story, which I think is if you're talking about immigrant stories, it's one of the greatest in Australian history. Two people come out on a ship, from Spain in 1961, land in Melbourne, get put in immigration camps, and a quarter of a century later, their son goes back and becomes the first Socceroo to ever play in and sign for a La Liga club, which is, at the time you just do it, but now I sit here and I'm very proud of that, and it's a pretty big achievement, and a lot of people didn't know that story, and a lot of people don't know stories of other, very, very, famous and fantastic, Socceroos that have played the game. Frank Farina was with me at the AIS, and he went on. His father was Italian, sugarcane people up in North Queensland, and he was the first Australian Socceroo to go back and play in Italy in Serie A. So it's these are real big achievements in world sport, and I just felt that if I could write my own story and my journey, because we all have one in sport, I just thought that maybe we as a nation, in football, soccer, whatever you want to call it, could start maybe, creating and telling more stories of past achievements and past pioneers, and so I not only did it for myself, but for other people in the game.
Well, I can't wait. I'm on a long flight tomorrow to America, and I'm downloading the Audible book because I've been told about it. I should have listened before I've come and sat here with you. It's a top 5 seller, and there's a reason it's a top 5 seller, because it's an amazing story, and you did set the benchmark for a lot of soccer players to follow in this country, that, you know, now we've had quite a few have played in England, we've had some play in Spain, and you've mentored some, you've led some, you obviously set the standards, you now work in a club where you're inspiring and setting the energy of this place, and joining Nick Montgomery, who's another great fella who we've had on the show before. So the story goes from AIS, where a lot of good players started. That used to be some program, right? Then you've gone to Spain, you've gone to England. You've played against some massive teams. You've played in FA Cups against Man United. You've done all that. Where did life go after football? Because it starts to get interesting.
Well, I can let you know how it began, because I never really wanted to play football, you know, for Australia or.
That's right. I heard you were a gun rugby league player.
I loved rugby league. You know, there was no Canberra Raiders in Canberra at the time. Yeah, so I loved watching Manly, and followed Manly back in the day. I wanted to play rugby league for the Kangaroos, and that was my kind of dream. But at 15, 16, I remember I was at a football match. I was playing a soccer match in Canberra, and Johnny Warren was there watching, and he came up to me and he said, the Socceroos need players like you, son. And that was kind of the turning point where, and to be honest, league was it was a tough game. And you know, mum and dad were of Spanish background, and everything was football in our household. So kind of, they said if I wanted to go down the football path, then they would back me 1,000,000% on that. And then I went to the AIS. I captained the AIS. I captained the Australian youth team, and on a youth tournament, a European tournament in Germany, we made the final against Real Madrid, and I was scouted then by a guy called Vicente Del Bosque, and he went on to manage Real Madrid and Spain to World Cup wins. So Ron Smith, who was my coach at the AIS, always says, "You're also the first Aussie kid to ever be scouted by Real Madrid." And so kind of that scouting kind of process led to me signing for Sporting Gijon in Spain, who were a top 5 team at the time. I played for 2 years, you know, between the age of 18 and 20. I was playing first 11 on loan from Sporting Gijon. I was on loan to Albacete and Jerez, but every week I'd be playing against Valencia, Barcelona, Deportivo La Coruña, Sevilla, Betis, you know, Real Madrid, all these teams. I'm 18 to 20 years of age, and it's never been done before. And then I got called up for military service after 2 years. And you know what, I probably may have stayed and done the military service, but they wouldn't let me play as a Spaniard at the time. I was considered a foreigner. So my 2 years in Spain were taking up a foreign import spot, which is even more kind of, I don't know if the right word's amazing, but you know, usually they went for the gun players in world football back in those days to occupy or take up their 2 import spots. So I was a young Aussie kid taking up an import spot, but I had a Spanish passport, and you know, I sat down with Dad at the end of the 2 seasons, and you know, it didn't make sense. You know, the Spanish government, you know, wanted me to jump into their military, because you had to do compulsory military service. So, you know, I was Spanish for military service, but not Spanish for football. So for me, you know, I'm either all in or all out. Yeah. So I escaped. I got on a flight to London, and if I'd have been caught at the airport, I would have been in a military prison for 2 years. So avoided that one, and then got to England, and I'd been playing first team football, you know, in Spain at 18, 19, 20, in the biggest stadiums in the world, and then, you know, dreams, you know, as kids, the things you dream of as a kid. Yeah. You know, and I get to London, and I was pretty shattered, because I'd had to leave a country that I thought I'd be in for the next 10, 12 years playing professional football, and I'd had some wonderful times and met some wonderful people, and then I'm in London and I don't have a club, and I've now got to go on trial somewhere. And my mate was doing politics at Nottingham University. So I went up and stayed with him. I caught a train, went up with him and stayed with him for a month, and it was around that pre-season time. And he said to me, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to go back to Australia. I want to trial with an English team." And he said, "Who?" And I said, "Well, we're in Nottingham, so why not Nottingham Forest?" And at the time they were like just come off being 2 times European champions. Brian Clough was their manager, the
legend.
Yeah, the legend Brian Clough, who many people just thought was a crazy genius. He was. My mate said, you can't walk into Brian's office and ask him for a trial, and I go, watch this. So, I rode my bike into the forest, the city ground in the middle of Nottingham, and knocked on his door, and ended up, within about 20 minutes, I'd got a trial off Brian Clough, arguably the greatest manager in British football. He said to me, "You've got some balls coming in here, son." He goes, I said, "I rode my bike in this morning, Gaffer, and I was just been playing in Spain, and I wondered if I could have a trial." And he said, "You've been playing in Spain?" And I said, "Yeah," and I've left because of military service. And he said, "Who was your manager?" I said, "Ex-Real Madrid legend Pachin." And he said, "That's fine for me." He said, "You'll start training today, and I'll sit you in between Des Walker and Neil Webb, who were legends at the time in English football." And so I became probably, I think, the second Australian to sign for Nottingham Forest after Alan Davidson did. And for me, you look at things in life, and sometimes, achievements, whether they're Socceroo caps or winning cups or finals or A-League titles or whatever, but for me, a real big honour and an achievement, I believe, was, the fact that Brian Clough thought I was good enough for his football team and rated me as a player and signed me for Nottingham Forest. That for me was a wow thing. And then I played for him. Yeah. For 3 months in the reserves, but I couldn't get into his first 11 because he had Des Walker and Neil Webb in my positions, but he really liked me. And he said, "Listen, son, I'm going to make a phone call, and Ipswich Town are going to sign you." So that's what happened. But if people ask me about Clough, he's just a mad genius. And I remember one of the first things he said to me when I walked into his office, and not many players ever walked into Clough's office, unless he was going to sack you. And I walked in, and his first question was, "Do you like cricket, son?" He said, "It better be the right answer." And I said, "I love cricket." And we started going through, like, I said, "I love the West Indies." Like Gordon Greenwich, Viv Richards, Desmond Haynes, that era of Windies, and then the Aussie team. And, he got up off his chair and he started playing shots. And, because his office overlooked, Trent Bridge, a cricket oval.
Yeah, right.
So we talked a lot of cricket. And he took a liking to me, and he said, "You're too good to play in my reserve, so I'm going to find you another team." And he made a phone call to Ipswich Town, and I made my English League debut against Hull City for Ipswich Town.
What a story. Mate,
just a little bit.
Mate, it's a little bit. I tell you what, though, because there are little lessons in there. So there's coaches listening, there's teachers listening, you mentioned the great Johnny Warren, and you mentioned a couple of words he said to you. Like, you think back, like, how important are those words to a 15-year-old? He saw something in you, and I dare say it was your toughness and your work ethic and probably your rugby league and your upbringing. Like, he saw something in you, but those powerful words, like, there's people listening that have the opportunity to make a difference to a kid's life. Yeah. And he said to you, "Socceroos need someone like you, mate." Yeah. And you went home, you told mum and dad, and 3 years after those words, you're playing in Spain. Yeah. Like, it's pretty big playing. That's incredible. It's the first kid to play. Yeah, and then
at the Bernal Stadium.
That's right.
Real Madrid Stadium, like that.
And then Spanish legends are the ones that are signing you and recruiting you. And then there's obviously in and amongst there too. You mentioned Ronald Smith. Like, his name in Australian football is very well respected, and he's responsible for developing a lot of players and a lot of coaches. That I really love how you give respect to people like him, and then we've led to Brian Clough, who there's some lessons there for people. So, fascinating, mate.
And you can take bits from many coaches that you have over a long time, and that's why now, I love what I'm doing here at the Mariners. Just trying to inspire and empower all our academy players or our A-League players to go on and chase big dreams. It's you got to set your goals high and I always had this dream of playing on big stages around the world. I'd sit at home at 15, 16 in Canberra, and I'd look at Elland Road, the Bernal Stadium, Wembley Stadium, the River Plate Stadium, in Argentina, all these famous, iconic stadiums around the world, and playing at Main Road, the old Man City round away, playing at the old Arsenal, Highbury, I look back on my career and I played in most of those stadiums against those teams, so just a wonderful, wonderful thing. But it was from, like you said, words that had been said to me, that just a few little words from people that mattered, that I believed were important, and that's what I try and do now with the young players we have, and just inspire and empower young players, because we've got a lot of talent in this country too.
Well, you and Nick and everyone here are doing a fantastic job. I mean, Australia just had a player in the World Cup who was the second youngest player to Pele to ever play in a World Cup, and he's come straight out of
pretty big,
that's. I mean, we're talking about some firsts with you here, but the second youngest player ever at a World Cup.
And I was very fortunate to work with him for 4 or 5 months before. Part of my job was, Nick works with them out on the pitch, and Nick's a wonderful manager, with a wonderful, playing record himself, and then we get on great. And I've said this on other podcasts and other interviews. Nick is. I've been around some of the world's best football managers, from Del Bosque to Lopetegui to Mourinho to Ancelotti to Brendan Rodgers, all friends of mine, all people I've been around. I've played under some wonderful managers. I've played against a Man United team with Sir Alex Ferguson on the bench, and that guy in there, Nick Montgomery, is of that ilk. He will one day grace those stadiums, as a manager. He did as a player, and he will as a football manager coach. Because he gets the game. He employs fantastic lieutenants, but more than that, if you said, in a couple of words, Nick Montgomery, he's just a wonderful man.
Well, I'd have to agree with you, and I think any listeners that have listened to when he was on this podcast, they would get that same feeling even if they've never met him.
Yeah.
So he's definitely going all the way, mate. Part of the book. Your life gets pretty interesting after you finish playing. So where it started, we've been there, we played in the biggest stadiums, you're a Socceroo, you set the benchmark, there's football.
It's a pioneering story,
pioneering, like
immigrant story.
Guys like Tim Cahill have followed you, and I know you've had a lot to do with Tim.
Yeah.
So can we just go, once you finish playing, you end up following the journey in the player agent world. So there'll be agents watching this, or there'll be people that are aspiring to be an agent. Your life went crazy. I mean, you ended up being David Beckham's personal manager, which there must be some crazy stories. But how did the journey start post playing? How did that start?
I was captain of on and off. I was sharing captaincy duties at Reading.
Right.
In my last few years. Alan Pardew was the manager. Brendan Rodgers was around within our club at the same time. So another two big managers that I've had the chance to befriend and be friends with, and get information and see how they work and learn from. And my career was coming to an end, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but while I was playing, I'd helped Tony Popovich go to Crystal Palace. I'd helped Mark Schwarzer go from Germany to Bradford, then he went to Middlesbrough and Chelsea. We all know that story.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of young men that I helped with some phone calls to agents and this and that. And it wasn't that I fell into the agent business, but I was retiring, and there was a lady that worked at Reading in the bar. Her name was Sue Roberts, and she was the head of Foster's / Courage at the time. It was the Aussie company in the UK, the beer company, And she said to me one day, she said, you dress up all right in a suit. I reckon you could be an agent, and I know England's #1. I said, who's that then? And she said, David Beckham's agent, a guy called Tony Stevens. And he's managed David Platt and Gary Lineker, and, you know, he's got Michael Owen and Beckham and Dwight York, and he's got, you know, he's the man. And I said, can you get me a chat with him? And she goes, let me work on it. So she came back to me and she said, Tony will meet you in Mayfair, London tomorrow at his office, and you're going to have about 5 minutes to impress him. If you're there after 5 minutes, you're doing really well. You know, if you get more than 5 minutes, you're doing well. Yeah. So about an hour and a half later, I rang her up and I said, he's making me a coffee. So yeah, the interview went pretty well, it was I got on a train. I wasn't really knowing what to expect, but I thought, you know what, this is. I'd always been good at identifying players, scouting more than the agent kind of role. Yeah. You know what, there are some good agents in the world. There's a lot of scumbags too. Yeah. But it's not really the job that really fulfilled my heart and made me happy inside. But I enjoyed the part where Tony would, you know, send me out scouting to look for players and this and that that we maybe wanted to sign. Because
how did it something to do with Tim Cahill's signing?
Yeah, and that was kind of part of it. So I've landed in this Mayfair office and I've walked in and I see 3 names, you know, behind the counter, you know, shining bright, and Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, David Beckham. You know, and SFX at the time were a global management company, and in the USA they controlled 75% of the NBA players, NFL players, the whole lot. You know, this was a big company. Yeah. So I walked upstairs and I had a look around the place, and I thought, I'm not leaving this place. Yeah. I'm gonna work for this lot somehow, somewhere. Yeah. And I had grabbed a bit of paper at my sister's at the time, and emails weren't really big at the time and stuff. So I'd somehow printed out a map of the world, because I wanted to impress Tony Stevens somehow, you know, because I kind of felt that he would say, well, you know, if you're going to scout for me, you're going to find players for me, if I mention Argentina, who's your contact there? So I printed out a map of the world on a bit of paper that I then folded up, and every country I put the name in of who my contact was. So I'd say Argentina, and I put Diego Maradona. Say Colombia, Carlos Valderrama. Yeah. You know, whatever. Italy, Christian Vieri, who I'd met through the Australian kind of connection. Every, you know, Poland, Darius Stavchik, I played with Darius at Reading, ex-Polish international. Yeah. So every country in the world
you could touch.
Yeah, Brazil, Ronaldo. Yeah. You know, whatever. I could within one phone call, I could get to the person that I'd put down, like Maradona, whoever, you know, for information on a player that we might want to recruit for our company. Yeah. And he just looked at it and he said, you know all those people? I said, yeah. And he never asked me any more about that. He never questioned it. He just went, good. And as I was leaving the office that day, he said, we've got a young lad that we're chasing. He's an Australian kid. And we've been trying to, I've got all my agents trying. I've tried, you know. I managed David Beckham, and I can't get this kid. You know, he's with a couple of lawyers, you know, in the East End of London. You know, that old gangster crew, and we can't get to him. We can't. And I said, "You're after Tim Cahill, are you?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Would you be able to get him for us?" And I said, "I'll get him for you." And he said, "Well, that's your trial." So within 24 hours, I had Timmy Cahill in the office, and he signed for SFX. Wow. So yeah, that was a story.
That got you a job.
On Timmy, yeah. And then after that, they kind of said, well, you know what, we're going to send you around Italy and Spain for 2 years. And so I would travel to every club in Spain and Italy and just build relationships. And it was kind of like a holiday. Yeah. A holiday travelling around Italy and
watching football, talking football.
Yeah. So I'd go to all the big clubs, Milan, AC Milan, Inter Milan, meet their CEOs, directors of football, and then you know the big one, and the one that was very famous within our family, Real Madrid. You know, coming from Spain, and you know, that was the big iconic club, you know, for our family in Spain, and you know, and when I was in Spain and knowing a lot of the Spanish internationals that played for them at the time, very famous people that were still at the club, I eventually began talks with Jorge Valdano, who'd won the World Cup for Argentina with Maradona, and a guy called Butragueño, and they were direct They were the two joint directors of football.
Right.
And I began talking with them, and I said, look, we've got 3 players in England in our management company, and I think you should sign them. You should really go take my advice on this one. I'm not wrong, you should sign these 3 players. And a year later they signed David Beckham. And the following year they signed Michael Owen and Jonathan Woodgate. Woodgate got injured, but the other 2 were pretty good players. You know.
So, and then SFX send you to Spain to live with, or basically live with and become the minder, if you like, for better words, personal manager, everything, to David Beckham, who was absolutely huge at the time. Like I only had one experience one day at Man United, the day I went there to visit training, and I've talked about it in other episodes, the influence Alex Ferguson had on me in one day. I mean, you're talking a lifetime here. But David Beckham wasn't there that day because someone threatened to kidnap his wife or his family, and it was huge news. And I just thought to myself, what a life this guy is living. And the attention, and like, even the day I was there, it was like, mate, just leave the phone. Well, actually, there was no phones. It was leave the camera in the bag, because we've had people that have taken a photo. It might be Alex and David just doing normal stuff you would do at training, in each other's face, talking. But let's say that it looked like
make
that.
A story of it.
Then a front page paper is a story of this blow up between David and Alex. So there was the paparazzi type stuff that went on in his life. You then had to live. Where do we start with that?
I don't know where to start, and I don't know where to finish. You know, but I can tell you somewhere in between. Is Princess Diana's death and what happened to her. You know, if you want to go hardball on
it was that intense.
You know, after so we landed the first day he arrived with his family for the medical. We land at the military Air Force base, and come off. I'm waiting for him with Real Madrid officials on the tarmac. He comes out of the private jet, and we get into a car out onto the motorway that goes into Madrid, and straight away helicopters above us. 2, 3, 4 helicopters. We've got paparazzi on motorbikes, in cars, and I'm talking, you know, a lot, hundreds on motorbikes, you know, and we're in cars doing 150, 160, 180 on freeways, motorways, trying to get away with them, and they're right next to us. You know, you've got a guy on a motorbike that's, you know, riding the motorbike. You've got a guy strapped to him that's facing the other way, and he's got a camera lens hitting the car at 180 kilometres an hour, snapping photos inside the car. You've got 3, 4 helicopters. You've got the police helicopter trying to fight off the news helicopters. You've got an army helicopter coming in, and this is just, man, as you get to the hotel, the whole thing is surrounded. It's surrounded. We've got 2 SAS commandos that are saying to me, Andy, we need more men. So
you were his personal minder.
I went as his interpreter.
You were his interpreter?
He didn't speak a word of English, so he needed me to talk to Ronaldo, Zidane, Figo, Raul, Casillas, all of them. So
unbelievable.
To the club,
Well, I can only imagine. I experienced a week with Juventus when Ronaldo was recently there, and just seeing the attention on him leaving training, the crowds of people, like you're needing police escort almost to leave training. But I only remember, I'm thinking back how huge that was when Beckham went there.
Well, this was even more because...
It was huge, way bigger than that.
Victoria was a Spice Girl.
Yeah.
So you had the Spice Girls to the mix, and they were like the biggest band in the world.
Well, she was one that was being threatened to be kidnapped.
Yeah. So you've got the Spice Girls, you've got Beckham joining Madrid at a time when it was the beginning of what Florentino Perez, the president, had wanted to create. He wanted to create the Galacticos, which was, so you had the other best 4 players in the world.
Yeah.
Zidane, Ronaldo Nazario. Yeah, this guy was flying in Victoria's Secret models, you know, on planes every day. You know, it was just madness. You know, he's flying models from around the world for parties. You know, busloads would turn up to his house.
So the paparazzi, again, I haven't read...
There's another spin-off story.
I haven't read the book, but I am locking this in for my flight tomorrow. You had a car crash.
Yeah, I had a car crash. It was for Romeo Beckham at the time. It was his birthday. And I can recall, probably he might have been 3 or 4. It was his birthday, and it was global attention everywhere. And we wanted to go to, I'm pretty sure it was, we'd planned to take the kid to the Hard Rock Cafe and close up the whole restaurant, and it was just going to be for us and the Beckham entourage. So I was, but I that night was going in a dummy car. So sometimes we would go in a dummy car, and I would put a blonde wig on, and with the tinted windows, they thought it was Beckham. So
Stop it!
Yeah.
Stop it!
Yeah, so
This is true.
Yeah, this is true. So I'd put a blonde wig on, and I had instead of Victoria, it was her sister, Louise Adams, and so we came out of the airport. We came out of the hotel driveway that day, and it was the hotel that we were in was a beautiful one. It was called the Santo Maro in the middle of Madrid. It was an old boutique, Mexican style, but it was right in the centre, and you could kind of there's one exit, one entry onto a one-way street.
Right.
That day I've come out, and the guards should have been blocking the street, but they weren't. So we've come out, and paparazzi have hit us side on, and I've gone unconscious for, don't know, but I came to, and when I came to, I looked to my left. Louise was kind of half dazed as well. We'd been T-boned, and there were paparazzi all over the car, like with cameras. All I could see were flashing lights.
Hang on a minute. So, did you have the blonde wig on?
Yeah.
I'd love to see the pictures.
Mate. So I had the blonde wig on.
So you had the blonde wig on in the car crash. You could have died here. You've got his sister-in-law, have you?
I was knocked unconscious, and I came to.
God.
When I've come to, I've seen maybe 50,
This is
60,
Princess
50,
Diana
yeah,
stuff.
I've seen 50, 60 humans on top of a Porsche. And
It's good to know you're travelling in a Porsche.
We always used to get like the top cars. They just give them to us. So I never
Talk me through that.
I didn't even have a part of that. After that crash, I'll tell you. It's an even funnier story. So I managed, when I came to put the car in reverse and kind of back into where I'd exited from the underground garage in the hotel. As I'm reversing the car, it's sliding along because one of the tyres is gone. And 2 SAS commandos jump out from the back and pull us both from the car and drag us into safety and move the car back, and then the shutters go down, and it's just us in an underground car park.
Gosh.
With 2 SAS commandos going, whoa. So half an hour later, after being pulled to safety by the SAS commandos, I'm in the garage, and I've got a pretty bad head knock as well. And I'm sitting there, and the Spanish civil guards turn up, and they're like the highway patrol now. And they ask me for my licence, and I pull it out, and I've got an expired New South Wales driver's licence.
Driving a Porsche.
Yeah. Driving a Porsche that belongs to Beckham,
that he didn't pay for.
That we didn't pay for. That I don't even know how we got it. Like, I just rang some bloke up, and he said, pick this car up.
Mate, I did hear stories that Beckham would just be able to go, get me a Ferrari, and it's there, because these car companies realise that there's paparazzi on him all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So are you the person that's getting the car?
I'm the person that was getting cars. So
talk us through an example.
An example is you go to Porsche or you go to Ferrari, and he says, do you think we can maybe get one of those cars? And I'd call them up, and whether it's Ferrari or Porsche or Aston Martin or whoever it is. Look, I'm David Beckham's manager here in Madrid. We'd like the possibility of driving one of your cars. Is there any chance of that? Yeah, one of your Ferraris or whatever. And it's like, it was straight away, it's like, Andy. And I'd say, you speak Spanish? Sí, hablo español. Come tomorrow, you drive the car, take it away for David.
Don't worry about checking your New South Wales licence.
Like, I wouldn't show a licence.
No.
And I wrote this in the book and spoke about it. I'd turn up, and then they'd give you a Porsche GT3 or top of the line Ferrari or whatever, Range Rover, anything, and no one asked me for a driver's licence. I wouldn't be asked for any type of ID. I didn't have to sign anything. I didn't know if the car was insured. I just get given the keys, and I drive it out and wave bye-bye.
As long as someone takes a photo, Beckham.
Yeah.
Wow.
So then he'd go away to England camps and holidays, and I'd drive these cars
car.
around. Yeah, I'd do a tour of Spain in a couple of days.
What a life. Well, so, mate, I'm sure in and amongst there's been some deep times where you've helped and mentor these players, not just live the high life as an agent or a manager, because that's in you as a person. You're currently doing that in a fulfilling role here at the Mariners. I know you'd give your time, you'd give your time to rehab centres, you give your time to community programs. So it's obviously somewhere on that crazy journey you were also deep inside you trying to make a difference to people, which every listener that I have is pretty much like that.
Look, I think I made a really big difference to David Beckham and his time at Real Madrid and the way he was accepted by the world's greatest club of all time, and the players that were there at the time. The night before he was due to be presented to the whole world and the squad as a Real Madrid player, I'd already organised him to meet Zidane and Ronaldo Nazario and Roberto Carlos through a friend of mine at a restaurant in Madrid. So,
and why would that be? Because you get it, you've played, you value connection in a team, I bet. You realise building relationships with key players.
And I saw him nervous.
And he was...
I saw him...
So you organised this?
He was the captain of England at the time. He was the captain of Manchester United. But, it doesn't...
You're still human.
Yeah, you're still human, and you're going to a new club, and there were another 4 or 5 players there that he considered were world legends, and he would say to me, "Well, I'm going to meet Zidane tomorrow. I'm going to meet this and that tomorrow."
And you organised.
And for him as well, when you can't speak the language and when you can't communicate properly with someone, it's an extra kind of difficulty. So
I love what you did there.
So to have me there as a confidant, and it quickly went beyond, because I was accepted by Ronaldo and Figo and Zidane and these guys and Roberto Carlos, because I'd played to a decent level. So I was more their friend, and Andy's a good guy, he's a football guy, he's here with David, he's helping David, he's to integrate into us. So I became kind of one of them, rather than his agent or his personal manager or something. So I just became one of the boys.
Well, do you know what?
To
be honest,
that was what helped a great transition.
Of course, and you get it, that connection piece it's very important for him to invest time in getting to know these guys off the pitch as well as on it,
100%.
Compared to just turning up day one to training. And I think there's definitely a space for this, mate, of having players have their own personal mentor, personal coach.
This one was important. This was really important, and even little things like I mentioned this in the book, but I'll give you an example of how sometimes awkward it can be for an international signing, with a new club, and it's as simple as the bus that you travel on. So we were going to meet the bus, to get on the bus for his first trip overseas with Real Madrid, and that morning he said, "Where do I sit?"
Something so simple.
You're captain of England.
Where do I sit on the bus?
Captain of Man United. You're transferred to Real Madrid, and you're shitting your pants about where you're going to sit. And Steve McManaman,
great point,
who was a Liverpool great, was at Real Madrid as well. He was but he was leaving that season.
Yeah.
But he was a joker, Steve McManaman, and he rang me up and he said, "Let's play a trick on. Let's screw with him." Yeah. So he gets on the bus and he goes to sit in the first chair that was free, and McManaman says, "That's Zidane's." He gets up and he goes, "No, that's Roberto Carlos's. That's Figo's. That's Raul's. That's..."
Yeah.
So he ended up in the seat next to the toilet on the team bus, and he was captain of England.
Yeah.
And it's just something so simple as that a player of Beckham's, standing at the time was worried about. But we joked about it in the car. I said, "You'll probably sit up near the toilet by the end of..."
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Yeah. Right, fascinating story. And you know what? You would think, Beckham's I don't know the guy, of course you do. But you would think he looks back on you as a very important part of his life. I mean, you nearly died pretending to be him in a wig with his sister-in-law.
Yeah.
Like there's a deep connection there that I'm sure if we ever get David, if you're listening, I would love you on the show. But I'm sure there's so much respect there from one of the world's global biggest names in sport.
I'd like to think so. I hope he does. We haven't spoken much since the Madrid days. I know Tim Cahill spoke to him, in terms of when I was writing my book and was everything cool and stuff like that. And so I know David knows, what I did for him at Madrid. He's not a silly boy. He's a clever man, a clever businessman, one of the world's greatest footballers that's ever played the game. And but I do know that I was a big part of why he was embraced by the Galacticos at the time, and why he was successful during his time at Real Madrid. And and he unless he doesn't read newspapers or listen to media or podcasts or whatever, he would know that I turned down millions to divulge information on him and his family, from the British press for many years. So, but that's not my style. That's not the man I am. I can't be bought, and at times I got into trouble for whatever, and the papers and the people that want to bring the big superstars down will attack you and threaten you with destroying your life, if you don't talk about who they really want.
Well, yeah, it's another world that, again, like the listeners here, it's always I'm trying to give them lessons, but these lessons, like you just learnt them on the run. Like you had people attacking your life personally because they knew information, what was going on in your life and David's life, and you're being offered millions to rat him out or create some sort of paparazzi style story.
And I'm a victim.
Millions.
I got an email at home from, Scotland Yard. Who gets an email from Scotland Yard? Unless you're really in shit. And I got an email, and I was told I was a victim of, the biggest media hacking scandal in probably the world history, and in British history, media history, and they found information. They found my name, alongside Beckham's name, Prince Harry, William, on pieces of paper at investigators' places. For years, my phone was hacked. Voicemails were stolen. Voicemails were opened. Information that was exchanged between David, myself, other footballers. They knew where we were going. So it was, at times you think you're going mad, and people are playing with you.
So there was often times you've got this crazy, this paparazzi thing happening, but people knew where you were going because people were already tracking your phone. And you didn't know all this.
No.
And then...
Well, they try and cause mayhem within the group. So, you've got Beckham and myself, and then you've got two SAS commandos, and you've got two ex-Cuban, Fidel Castro Secret Service agents.
Yeah.
These are highly skilled operators.
Yes.
And there's 6 of us that know where we're going. Beckham, myself, and these 4. And we get there, and only 6 of us know where we're going. But we get there as 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people, including, paparazzi.
Wow.
So, then within the group, people start going, someone here's leaking.
Yeah.
So they try and cause mayhem so that you start arguing with each other and chaos. And I've heard them trying to create chaos, while we're getting into cars so we can have a car crash. Because the dead shot or the shot with blood all over it is the money shot.
And that's
the one they want. It was nearly me.
It was nearly you.
But if Beckham's lying there dead, like Princess Diana was, that's the money shot. That's the multi-million-dollar money shot that they wanted. And I've heard them in Spanish saying that.
My God. Well, they would have thought they had the multi-million-dollar shot with you because you had the blonde wig on, but then they would have...
Then I reversed the Porsche back into the garage.
Because it wasn't in. Oh, mate.
So it was, but it's things like that impact you for life,
It had a big impact, because I have heard you went through tough times.
Yeah,
do you mind if we go there?
No, I want you to go there, and I'm not proud of where I went after football, in terms of cocaine and crack cocaine, but I'm very proud that I overcame that and that I got over it, and you know, it was just something that, you know, when all the football kind of finished and then the Beckham kind of job finished, I was probably looking for the same highs and you know, the same kind of adrenaline rush and the same camaraderie, you know, but I didn't have it anymore. And you know, I probably looked for it in the wrong places, you know, with wrong substances and yeah, it's fun at first, you know, but there's, you know, a couple of people that introduced, you know, cocaine to me are now dead from cocaine use, you know, so at a younger age than me. And I went cocaine and then I went crack cocaine. And if you go crack cocaine, 99% of the time you're dead or you're brain dead. So I really believe that I think I'm here for a reason. And you know, we all kind of, you start thinking about what you're going to leave, what legacy you're going to leave, what kind of message and education and you know, how you can help the next generations and yeah, I'm not ashamed anymore to say I'm at peace. You know, I'm really like, there's no elephant in the room. I was a cocaine addict, I was a crack cocaine addict, and I'm here, I'm head of athletic development at the Mariners. I'm one of Monty's assistants. I help the young lads. You know, I'm still chasing my dreams. You know, why can't we go to the highest levels of football? Why can't we win championships with the Mariners? Why can't we be Asian champions? You know, and in the meantime, I go to the Glen Rehab Centre and inspire them. I just do workouts with them. You know, they ask me to come and put sessions on for them, and I say no. I just want to come here as Andy. Come here and Andy, and we'll do some bench press together and hit the bag.
How
you
good.
know, and that's kind of that for me is, I don't want to go there as a job. I just go there and we talk and we hit a bag and then you know do this and that, and you know, because people ask me how I gave up. It's the $1 million question, isn't it? How'd you give up cocaine?
Actually, you just said if you ever go crack cocaine, you usually end up
dead or brain
buried.
dead.
Yeah, you usually end up buried. How did you not die? Did you go close to dying?
Oh yeah. I reckon I've been in circumstances where I could have been killed because of the company that you surround yourself with, you know, in the pursuit of crack cocaine or in the, you know, the taking of it. You know, it's you know, there's some bad places in London, some bad places in Sydney, some bad places in Colombia. You know, in the middle of a cocaine addiction. The Socceroos in Football Australia sent me to Colombia to be their chief scout.
Sorry, I shouldn't.
No. It's actually it's very funny, isn't it? It's like they didn't know.
So they didn't know. So you're just.
I'm in the middle of a cocaine addiction. I'm living in Sydney.
Operating as normal.
Yeah, operating as normal. Just, you know, I was a functioning kind of addict. You know, and I don't know. I think there was probably 10 years in Sydney. And whenever I hear the birds now at like 4 or 5 in the morning,
yeah.
It's kind of like this haunting sound that I like, because now I'm not on cocaine, but all I can hear was birds, you know, fucking birds at 4 or 5 in the morning. It's like, and that's kind of like, and that was the time I was running out of the drug and I wanted to go and chase more. Where do I go? Across, here, there.
No way.
Yeah, so it's like, it's...
So
just
this
madness.
is like,
and so in the middle of that, in the middle of that, there was a cocaine. I'll tell you how it leads to the Colombia thing. I'm living in Bronte at the time, and at 7 in the morning, I say to my daughter who was staying with me, "Call the police. We're surrounded by gunmen."
No way, your daughter's here.
But we weren't surrounded by gunmen.
She knows you got a problem?
Not really, but she was starting to kind of like, I think she kind of saw me in that state. I was hiding it from her at the time, but she saw me when I came out and said, "You've got to call the police," and I think she just panicked, and so she called Waverley Police Station. And when you make a phone call to a police station, Waverley Police Station, this was at the time, and you say you're surrounded by gunmen, you know, they send the chopper. Maroubra Target Response Group, you know, 10 paddy wagons straight down. I was on McPherson Street, just down the road from Bronte Road there.
Yeah.
And you know, not far from the police station. You know, there's cars everywhere. Chopper in the sky, the tank from Maroubra, the whole lot. So they turn up and, you know, they do a kind of the whole thing, and then there's 2 detectives left, and they all leave, and there's no one here, and one of them comes and knocks on my door, and he looks through the bars and my door at my apartment in Bronte, and there was a picture of me playing for the Socceroos in Reading or something, and he says, "Can you come out here for a minute?" And they kind of knew me from around the area, and he grabbed me around the collar there, and he goes, "Andy, he goes, you're too good for this, mate." He goes, "I'm going to help you." Yeah, so it was a couple of police officers from Waverley Police Station that detectives, I think they were, and they said, if you admit you got a problem, we're going to help you.
We'll help you.
Yeah, and I said, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was pretty. That was a tough day, and then.
So you went into some rehab?
Yeah, well, they were like, there was 100 neighbours around the place, halfway down McPherson Street in Waverley, and everyone's looking, and the cars are dispersing, and there's 2 detectives and me, and I said, I've got a problem, but you can't take me to jail, you can't lock me up. And one of them goes, "Why?" He goes, I said, "I've got to be in Colombia on Saturday." And he goes, "The last place
for you."
No, last place you need to be, mate, is Colombia. And he goes, "Well, what are you doing in Colombia?" He goes, I said, "I'm the chief scout for the Socceroos 2006 World Cup." So I answered to Gus Hiddink and Graham Arnold.
What a great crew that was.
Yeah, and they're just going like, it's just insanity. So anyway, they take me to Prince of Wales Hospital. I think it was St George Hospital first, and then I ended up in Prince of Wales. And I thought they're just going to take me there for a checkup, And then 24 hours later, I wake up. They shot me up with whatever, and put me to sleep after like 10 days on crack cocaine psychosis. And wake up the next morning. I'm about to leave the Prince of Wales Hospital, and security guard says, "You can't go, mate. Your file's been marked not fit for society."
Right. I
said, "What do you mean?" He said, "The lady over there has your file, the nurse over there has your file, you're not fit for society, and you can't leave here until we do psychiatric testing on you." I said, "But I've got to be in Colombia on Saturday."
Did you go? Did you end up going?
Yeah.
You end up going?
Yeah. So there was 2 days of trying to pass tests in the loony bin. So I'm in the loony bin. I think it was St George, or I think it was the Prince of Wales Hospital in Randwick there. I'm in the loony bin, and people are genuinely nuts in there. Yeah. And I remember one of the guards one night, and one of the nurses, a male nurse, a real nice guy, and I said to him, "I'm not nuts like these people. Yeah. I've just gone mad on cocaine. I was starting to see pink elephants and bunnies and this and that and whatever, and I saw gunmen and this and that, but I'm not mad." And he goes, "That's how they all start, Andy."
That's how they start, mate. They weren't always mad.
Yeah, they always, that kid was a genius rugby league player, and all he does is bounce an imaginary tennis ball around all day.
Oh, mate. Yeah, so you saw this.
Yeah, so I'm in this loony bin, and then they come up and they go, "Oh, Andy, so, the first psychiatrist, what have you been doing?" And I'm an ex-Socceroo, and I've been looking after David Beckham and his 300 million, pound business, and moved to Real Madrid and that, and they start laughing.
Yeah, I could see why.
And then I saw her go back to like the nurses, and they're laughing.
Google?
Well, they weren't even Googling. It's like they're laughing first.
Yeah, right.
They're going, "This guy's insane. He thinks he's looked after Beckham." And another one comes back, and she goes, "Oh, so do you know Posh Spice?" I go, "Yeah, he used to take her shopping all the time."
Yeah, nearly died with his sister.
Yeah, and it's just like it's lunacy.
Yeah,
because people don't believe you.
You could see why, yeah.
And then finally they start getting to the bottom of it. And on the Thursday I'm allowed out, and then I get on a plane to Colombia, and I'm flying to Colombia to do, to watch matches. Yeah. So they base me in Colombia, but I've got to watch Argentina, Colombia at the River Plate in Argentina. I've got to watch Brazil play in Rio de Janeiro or whatever, right? So I'm based in Colombia. Not long after being let out of the loony bin for cocaine psychosis.
Yeah.
I'm flying into Bogota and then into Barranquilla. I've got my Aussie, tracksuit on. I'm going in, scouting, and then, and all I can think is, where am I going to get the best line of cocaine I've ever had?
Wow. So. Yeah. I mean, that 2006 team, they ended up playing a game against Brazil. So you'd already done some homework for the staff. You've scouted all that for them.
We ended up playing against Uruguay. Remember? So Uruguay was, right. This is a story for you. Mm. So I'm scouting for, in and out of South America for 9 months.
Yep.
And Ron Smith and I did it together. We give Gus and Arnie the dossier, everything. Climate, logistical,
Yep.
technical. You know, if one team played at altitude and another played, you know, in direct sun with a lot of humidity, whatever. Everything was covered that you could cover, so that Gus and Arnie would know exactly what team they were up against. You know, everything.
Yeah.
So we did all that, and it was done with me on cocaine.
Holy! So one of the biggest moments in Australian sporting history.
Yeah.
You did all the prep, or a lot of prep.
Ron Smith and I did all the scouting prep for that 2016 to beat Uruguay in the World Cup qualifier.
To make it.
Yeah, to make it. And the only game that Ron and I and Graham Arnold were not able to see was Uruguay in Uruguay. So we wanted to scout Uruguay playing one of their qualifiers.
Yeah.
Okay. But there was something happened with all the planes. There was a plane strike or something, so none of us could get to watch Uruguay live. So we watched them on TV, but it's always good to kind of go live and,
sure.
and you see the little bits of the stadium that you...
Are you still on cocaine at this time?
Yes, I was still on cocaine at this time. So I ring my friend.
Ron Smith doesn't know about it, of course.
No, he doesn't know about it, neither did the Socceroos.
No one knew about it?
No one knew about it.
My God.
I then, I can't get...
And I'm not talking bit of cocaine. Like
no, I'm talking like,
habit.
I'm talking the first night I arrive in Colombia, you know, scouting for the Socceroos, I order 20 grams.
Wow.
It's $10 US.
Yeah.
Yeah, times 20, $200 US for 20 grams of pure white cocaine. It's the greatest deal you could ever make in history.
Yeah.
Compared to prices in Australia.
Yeah.
You know, I know I'm making light of it, but it is serious. But you know, back then, it's the greatest deal I'd ever made.
When did it stop, and how did it stop?
Well,
before
it stops, or at how it stops.
Yep.
I've got to tell you this one because you'll like this one, being a rugby league man.
Yeah.
So, Arnie, myself, and Ron Smith can't get to watch Uruguay in Montevideo, but I'd organised to catch up with one of Australia's leading rugby league agents, who's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Okay, at that game, I was going to get him into the game, and we were going to watch it. His name's Daryl Mather, SFX Sports Group, represents a lot of him and George Mimas.
That's some great players.
So, I said to Daryl, I said, mate, I'm putting a badge on you today, mate, and you're the marshal. You're the chief scout for the Socceroos. Uruguay were playing, I'm not sure who they played, Chile or something like that. Yeah. You're doing the match report for us. So Daryl Mather, one of Australia's leading rugby league agents, did the match report, reconnaissance, the whole lot, for the Uruguay match in South America that we used to beat them at ANZ Stadium.
No way! Does anybody know this?
It's in my book. I don't
think so.
It's in my book. Daryl knows it. Ron Smith knows it now.
I never knew Daryl was into soccer. Or he's not.
Oh, he loves Tottenham.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, I think he loves soccer. He loves football more than soccer, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've taken him to Tottenham. He's a mad Tottenham fan.
Yeah, right.
He loves Tottenham.
Wow. So
then kind of.
So he's working for you while you're partying. I want to know how it stopped, because there's been lots of little lessons here, but there might be some athletes watching. There might be some coaches watching that have dabbled down this path that if they're not careful, mate, they could either end up dead or career ruined. Yeah. Did you hit rock bottom for this to stop?
Yeah, on several fronts.
When you say rock bottom, tell me.
There was a couple. There was in one instance I was arrested in Reading. You know, I'd been on crack cocaine for about 10 days. Just out somewhere behind a golf course, ended up in a backyard somewhere. A lady rings up. Thought I was a burglar at first. Anyway, they get a helicopter up. I'm getting chased by dogs, 4 police. So there's like the chases that you see on TV with running through a forest, and there's Alsatians chasing you.
And this is in a town where you captain that club.
So and an hour, after that morning, I'm in a prison cell. I'm pacing around like a tiger. And I'm on crack cocaine high. I've run into a barbed wire fence. I'm cut to pieces, shredded to pieces. The dogs have been at me the whole lot, but I can't stop. I'm walking around. I'm pacing this way. I'm pacing that way. In the book, I've said I felt like one of Joe Exotic's tigers. I'm pacing right. I'm passing this way, that way, just going nuts. Nuts. When's the noises in my head going to go? These noises have to go. And previously, how did they go? Oh, more cocaine. Just make a bigger noise, and maybe the little noises go.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's just noises. It happened once in Sydney as well. I was driving around and I went out to get more cocaine, and I thought every car in Sydney that was behind me in front of me was a cop car. Because when you're not doing the right things and you're kind of doing things that
paranoid.
Paranoid. Like every car's a cop car. So I'd go round and round about 10 times, and if you'd lose him, it wasn't a cop car, and if he's still behind you, it is a cop car. But then the one that's turned off is like, man, and then you go past over the Harbour Bridge, and there's a traffic stop, an RBT, and they let you go, and then, I got past that one, but you think that they've only let you through because the highway patrol's ready to nab you down the road. It's madness. It's madness. And there's just a noise in your head all the time that's just like... I can't even explain it.
Did you lose friends, family through all this? Where's family in all of this?
Family's really good now.
They're good now?
Yeah. Oh, look.
Did you realise I'm about to lose all this?
Well, I never lost them. I never lost the real close ones, and Dad was disappointed. But then found out a lot of whys, and before he passed, I was able to tell him a lot of truth about, the getting hacked in Europe and this and that. So he kind of, it was good for him, it was good for me that all the truth came out in the end, and he passed, and we were good with that. Mum would always back me, good or bad. But yeah, a lot of people go missing. A lot of people that you think in sport, in football, that are your friends, a lot of them go missing when you hit down times. There was, when I was playing in England and you'd play against Man United, you'd get 100 people calling you the day before for tickets, phone calls all the time, After I finished playing football, I don't think I got a phone call,
in 10 years. You don't get those phone calls anymore.
Didn't get a phone call for 10 years, and maybe just someone saying, are you all right, Andy? Maybe the Socceroos, hierarchy saying, are you all right, Andy? Maybe the PFA saying, are you all right, Andy? Just maybe one phone call in 10 years.
Never happened.
No. So, I know those federations and associations are trying to get better now, and it's because of stories like mine that highlights where you can get better. But if you say why, I wanted to be a better husband, a better dad, a better son, a better brother, and you just, I can't tell you exactly how, that's the madness of this. I suppose I had to find another drug, and football was always my drug.
Yeah.
And now that I'm back in it, I'm the happiest I've ever been in a long time.
Good on you, mate.
Mate, I wake up so pumped every morning. I'm living my best life here on the coast, but it wasn't like I went to a rehab centre. I didn't go to a rehab centre. I didn't do any of that. I just, I suppose I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired, mate.
Yeah.
Just get sick and tired of being sick and tired, and every single day of your life as you wake up, you haven't slept. I didn't sleep for 10 years. I don't think I slept for 10 years in Sydney. It's like constantly just off my chops, constantly
mate.
And you're like,
well, do you know
4, 5, 6 day benders, then your body shuts down to almost death, and then you're back on it again. And it's just non-stop, and then you're living in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, and you wake up one day and every single person even the people that you go to that own the gym, the people you go to the gym in Bondi Junction, to get fit, to lead a clean, healthy lifestyle, and everyone is doing cocaine. Policemen, models, rugby league players, normal punters, every single person that you can think of in the eastern suburbs is doing this shit. And that's what your life's about.
That's crazy, mate.
So I got out of the eastern suburbs and went home to Canberra.
Did you?
Went home to Canberra, met Janie, my now wife, and she, she helped me a lot. She would go around, I don't know if just you're kind of running away from everything and cocaine, and I was like Anthony Kiedis from the Chili Peppers. He'd run off to hotels left, right, and centre, and she'd be chasing me in the middle of the night. Just chasing her. Kiedis says he would go to random hotels and inject himself with heroin, and I'd do cocaine and just slowly trying to commit suicide for some reason. But she never gave up on me, and Yeah, so she's a good girl. So her dad was a racing car driver, back speedway champion of Australia, and so we were into sport, and so I met her, and great family, and that got me back on track, mate. So,
mate, this conversation's gone in a lot of directions. I never knew it'd go that deep. I mean, your life was about to end pretty much. Did you ever think about ending it?
Yeah, I did.
Did you?
You know what? Sometimes you think, especially a couple of times, and I did write it in the book as well. It's kind of like, how do I end the noise? How do I end this noise? There's just fucking noise in my head all the time. It's just like a zoo. Like I could hear every animal, like lions roaring, wolves howling. Just constant noise. And how do you fix it? More cocaine, more crack cocaine. I'm trying to give up crack cocaine, 5 houses up the road in Bronte, next to the most exclusive girls' school, up the road. There's a crack cocaine chef.
Yeah.
It's just madness, so, and it's just insanity.
You wanted to end that noise,
but I wanted to end the noise, but I suppose, what, I don't really have a view on some people that commit suicide or don't, because who am I to judge, someone that takes their life? Some people say it's a very selfish thing, I had a friend that took his life, when we worked at Wallara Council together, and he never told me, but, I later found out that, he'd gone into children's homes, in New South Wales, 30, 40 years ago, and for the first 6 years of his life, he'd been raped every day.
So the trauma.
And he took his life, so... I don't know, but maybe I wasn't brave enough to and maybe there was something always in the back of my head that was saying, I'm a good person. I've got a lot of good to offer.
Mate, you've got so much to offer. You're doing it, mate.
Yeah.
Like, sorry to make you get emotional.
No, it's all right. So it was So yeah, I never went down that road. I couldn't do it to my daughter, to my parents, there's just too many people in my life that and I wanted to. I kind of knew that I was strong enough to come back to normal. Yeah. But for a long time, it was really hard to find out how. To kind of work out how, and like part of it was just going back to Canberra, mate, and just kind of where I was born, and just going back to your roots, and leading a more simple life, and going to the gym, and during that I became part owner of a boxing combat gym in Canberra, and became consultant strength conditioning coach for the Olympic Games boxing team in 2012, and then through that I've met Jeff Horn and Cam Bosis and a lot of people. So really I found another drug in sport again.
He's helping other people.
Yeah, and now I in the last 3-4 months I've done, before Christmas I went to the Salvation Army at Duralang and gave out 100 books and did a talk for 100 people, and that were alcoholics that were this, and I sat in front of them with my wife and gave them all a Christmas present, my book, and I just, it was one of the happiest days of my life. I left the place and I said, I got more happiness today than playing in a soccer room match. Today was one of the greatest days of my life, and I sat there in front of 100 people in the chapel, the Salvation Army, and I said to them, I know you all got your problems, okay, I'm here from the Mariners, this is my role now, but I want you all to know that I should be dead and I was a cocaine and crack cocaine addict.
Good on you, mate.
So,
seriously, you are a pioneer of Australian football that I'm sure now the people in Australian football will look back on. I know there's people close to you like the Timmy Cahills of the world who have so much respect for you. You're changing the lives of kids now on the coast, but also not just sports people. Yeah.
I feel now, Hayden, is like, a moment in time where people go, what's your next project? What are you doing? Besides the football, and I have a lot of big dreams, with Nick, to continue, working here and being successful here and impacting, young footballers' lives positively. But you know, one project is, you know, when you say about, you know, I've lived a grand life and done a lot of things. Not in an egotistical way, but I have. I've lived a movie, you know, and I've seen the, you know, the Jerry Maguires, the Wolf of Wall Street, you know, the James Bond movie. And then you add Real Madrid and you add
You're all
Beckham.
those movies together.
They're all those movies together, you know, and whoever decides, you know, whether it's Netflix or whoever decides to turn this into a, you know, a Netflix series, a movie, and whether they want to make it football or change it to a different code, or about a guy that became an agent, that was a footballer, that was a pioneer. It's whoever decides to grab it, be the greatest movie ever told, or one of them.
I've sat here for an hour. I could sit here for hours and hours. I wish I was Netflix, because I would be doing it, mate. Well done on changing your life around.
Thank you.
Well done. I know people in your game that talk of you very, very highly. So I don't know if you know how much respect that people have for you in the game, but well done on that.
It's nice to know.
Well done on
really
that.
Appreciate that.
And well done on not only changing footballers' lives, but people's lives now.
Yeah, that's a big thing that I like doing. It's, you know, we talk. I'm in football now, so I talk a lot about that. But you know, if my book, if my story of not even the football part, but the part of conquering an addiction, you know, of seeing a lot of darkness and not giving up and then coming back, and then you know, I say to the guys at the Glen Rehab, you know, if you know I've been places you guys have been. We've probably crossed paths in Redfern at 3-4 a.m. You know, 15, 20 years ago. You know, and here I am now. You know, in a great role at the Central Coast Mariners in the A-League. You know, you know, don't give up. Don't give up. You know, you just keep working hard, and you know, the other good thing is, you know, the other important thing is, you know, surround yourself with the right people. You know, surround yourself with winners. Surround yourself with good people, and ultimately I think that's what you will be.